When our founding fathers threw off the yoke of foreign tyranny, they did so largely as a reaction to encroaching intermediation. Restrictions on transactions and oppressive taxation, even on the simple creation of official records, were such an affront to liberty that they resulted in the American Revolution. How could a faraway power charge the affixation of stamps to official documents, preventing local parties from conducting simple transactions? Soon after the taxation and document restrictions came physical restrictions, checkpoints, barricades, and occupation. Indeed, the right to transact freely is coupled with the right to assemble, to incorporate, to prosper, and to speak. America is a nation built on the values of individual liberty and human rights, strong property rights, and openness. While we haven't always lived up to the best of our ideals, and we don't always, America's values are human values, and we achieve our greatest successes when we strive to live up to the best of our beliefs. We believe in the freedom to transact. We believe that protecting the fruits of one's own labor and being able to execute transactions with another willing party is core to capitalism, free trade, American values, and indeed the human spirit. It is impossible to imagine a future where humanity is supremely successful, but in which two humans cannot transact directly with one another without an intermediary. This freedom has always existed, but until recently it had not expanded into the digital realm. To be sure, a passerby could purchase something from a yard sale directly with cash, you know, the wrinkled and cotton-based paper you might have in your wallet. You probably don't have any. But no digital means to exercise that inherent freedom to transact directly without an intermediary existed. That is not until Bitcoin. Sure, we have digital dollars today. We have fintech apps. But most digital systems we possess today are nothing more than window dressing atop the existing centralized intermediaries, a slick UX serving as a veneer over the legacy system. The gatekeepers have persisted, and gatekeep they have. In almost every country on earth, from liberal democracies to totalitarian dictatorships, those gatekeepers have blocked, frozen, even stolen the funds of citizens, even those who have broken no local laws. And they've relegated that freedom to transact to a mere suggestion, one that can be taken away without even a court order. Our once free and open system is today a web of interlocking, rent-seeking intermediaries and gatekeepers, all with a behemoth government surveillance apparatus strapped on top. Bank Secrecy Act reporting thresholds were set in the 1970s and haven't been updated for inflation. The $10,000 suspicious activity report and currency transaction report threshold set then is the equivalent of $2,000 today. The threshold has remained the same despite significant declines in dollar purchasing power, effectively expanding the surveillance state. Nobody voted for this. Soon the purchase of a consumer electronics good could require the filing of a SAR. Government has deputized banks and technology companies as a means to surveil and restrict the innate human freedom to transact. And now some want to deputize software developers, computation data centers, and indeed everyday Americans who choose to run Bitcoin software in their own homes. This is not good for Bitcoin, our economy, or for America. Why did our core human freedoms not transpose to new global communications, economic, and technological networks? For what reason did the technological expansion of the last 75 years mean that humans could not continue to transact directly with one another as they have for millennia? The reality is that each technological advancement presents new opportunities, opportunities for both liberty and enslavement, for justice and travesty, for majesty and manipulation. There will always be forces who seek to pervert the tools of the future to perpetuate the injustices of the past. Our challenge as humans and Americans is to build and grow society while not only maintaining but expanding human freedom. Bitcoin is a tool for expanding human freedom. You will hear today about how Bitcoin supports human rights and liberty across the world, from activists who fund their operations to refugees who protect their wealth. You might ask whether the freedom to transact has negative repercussions. Some might remember the quote from Ben Franklin quite famously, "Those who would give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." But the reality is that Bitcoin is a terrible ledger for crime. Its transactions are transparent. Its ledger is permanent. Law enforcement, forensic investigators will tell you that Bitcoin is easier to trace than traditional fiat, and that its use for illicit activity has mostly declined in both real and relative terms over time. But Bitcoin has other features that make it widely adopted around the world. In addition to transactional freedom, Bitcoin is also provably and predictably scarce. It's well known as digital gold, scarce enough to hold its value, but available enough to be good money. In fact, Bitcoin was the first instantiation of digital scarcity in human history. It literally undoes copy and paste on the computer, which is why it has succeeded as the first natively digital money. Just as scarcity drives value across commodities and other goods, scarcity is also core to Bitcoin's value. It stands in stark contrast to the supreme abundance of the United States dollar and other fiat currencies. Proximity to that money printer has helped the United States expand its influence around the world, but that expansion has come at a heavy price: crippling debt. It is no secret that the US government is doing a dismal job at managing its finances. Just during this speech alone, the US government will have added $200 million to the national debt, $1.50 per US household every 30 minutes, $10 billion a day, $1 trillion every 100 days. That debt is unsustainable, and everybody knows it. We are on a path that leads to one of two places: huge spending cuts and tax increases, or crippling inflation. This used to be the iconic swan song of doomsaying gold bugs, but I promise you, markets have figured it out. It took time, but it's now the mainstream investing consensus on Wall Street. Real rates, as a measure of nominal interest rates minus the inflation rate, have diverged significantly from the gold price. Demand for gold is rising worldwide, while demand for US government debt is declining. For years, gold and US Treasuries served as hedges and traded with a high positive correlation. Today, that correlation is deeply negative. The world is literally stockpiling gold while reducing its exposure to US debt. Why could that be? This should worry every American and every American policymaker. This is American interest, power, and influence declining before our eyes. Now, if that worries you, and if you think that Bitcoin further undermines American interests, power, and influence, the best insurance is to own Bitcoin and to support the growth of the Bitcoin industry in America. We are already the global leader in Bitcoin ownership, entrepreneurship, mining, technology, and intellect. The US government is the largest holder of Bitcoin. There's no surprise that America is the global Bitcoin leader. We have the deepest and best capital markets, the strongest property rights, the most legally codified human rights, and our values align with the open, permissionless nature of the Bitcoin protocol. Bitcoin brings jobs, growth, prosperity, and liberty, and this is a lead we should not squander. Contrary to what some critics will tell you, Bitcoin and America can succeed together. While it is true that as a fixed supply commodity money, Bitcoin's value is impacted by the imprudence of our monetary and fiscal policies, it is also true, as I've argued, that Bitcoin is an expression of American values and power, not just a hedge against their dominance. Bitcoin doesn't just hedge against American dominance and influence, it enhances it. Bitcoin is innovation, it is liberty, it is power, and it is hope. We can grow our economy, bring and keep jobs in America, and expand our international and geopolitical influence by embracing the gold of the future. And the good news is, to accomplish that, we don't really have to do anything. It's more about what we shouldn't do. We're already the global leader, we need just not squander it. And make no mistake, if we make it impossible for Bitcoin to thrive in America, we won't be banning Bitcoin. We'll be banning America from Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is here to stay. That's the reality. If the United States doesn't press its advantage, other nations will, and other nations are. And those nations might be ones who do not see the world the way that we do, and who choose to build a different future that is much more damaging to our values than an American Bitcoin industry ever could be. The future is digital, and the United States has pole position to ensure that the internet's digital native money has a safe and vibrant American foundation. If we drop this ball, somebody else will pick it up, and we might not like the way they play the game. Thank you.